I decided to share everything, to leave something to, obviously, to my grandchildren and hopefully one day to my great-grandchildren, but also for other people to know that these things happen, and it happened for 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 the wrong reasons. It happened because people are hateful, and they shouldn't hate, because hate is terrible. It's a terrible disease, and they should know that if people understand each other, it doesn't matter what nationality you are, or what color you are, or what religion you are. We are all people. We are all human beings, and nobody should do anything like that to any other human being. It doesn't matter what they are. We are all God's kids. We are all God's children. And God didn't hate. And I don't understand why people are so hateful. And I want people to know that this could happen to anybody and to any of us. It doesn't matter that I'm Jewish and Christian or white or black. It could happen to anybody, because hatred is a terrible thing. And I want people to know that this happened, and it happened to us. We lost the families, innocent children, innocent mothers, and innocent old people and young people, and for no other reason, only because we were Jewish. And I don't want that to happen to my children, to my grandchildren, or to any grandchildren, or any people, any religion. That is, to me, if you are a good person, that's all I care about. So I hope other people think the same way.
Yeah. Well said.
And that's the honest truth. That's the way I lived all my life. I'm 84 years old, and this is the way. I was born in Romania in 1938. And unfortunately, they all perished in the Holocaust. My older sister was 8 years old, and I was 6 at the time. We lived in Romania, but in a small village. But at that time, it was Hungary. And the Hungarians, unfortunately, were not very good to the Jews. And when they were very good friends with the Germans, and the Germans came in, and they brought them in the little village. And then they took my father first. They took him to Budapest, him and his brother. They took them and they put them in jail first. And then they started collecting the Jews. We're supposed to wear yellow stars. Every family, Jewish family, including my parents and myself and my sister at the time and my grandparents, we were wearing yellow stars. But obviously I was too young to understand what happened, that we were different. And then my father was in touch with us, and then he wrote my mother that they took them from Hungary to Germany. So that was the last time. That was in 1944. So that was the last time we heard about my father. And then they started, it started being, they collected people and they took them from our village to, I was in Gercsamika, and they started taking people to Satmar, which was it was a city. And they started putting them in like in temples. They didn't start taking them to Germany yet. And my mom, she heard about stuff, what's happening with the children and with everything, but she didn't imagine that something terrible is going to happen. But she decided to take me, because I was the youngest, and to leave my sister with my grandparents, who lived not far away from us. And she thought that we're just going to be a few weeks, and things are going to calm down. Good friend who knew somebody in a different little village, and he took us there. And in the meantime, they started taking them from the village. They took my grandparents and my sister, and then they took from my father's side, they lived in another village, and they started taking the people from there, and slowly they took everybody. And my mother obviously heard about it, and we were maybe 2 months in this place. We were in an attic, and it was very bad because it was the attic didn't have a chimney, and it was very hot, and it was full of smoke. The smoke used to come in there, and I said, my mother was telling me constantly that I have to be good because if they come and they catch us, they're going to kill us. She had to tell me. And I said to my mother one day that I'm going to start dancing and screaming because I couldn't stand. I was choking from the smoke. And then my mother sent word to my father's friend from the small village where we came from. And he came and he took us in the woods. It was like a cave. It was a cave. It was as big as an oven. My mother couldn't stand up, only either sitting or laying down. And the cave was inside. As I said, it was and on top we had trees. And so it was all covered. And when it was raining, the roots used to drop the water on us. I remember well that even God was mad at us because it was always raining and it was always damp. And my father's friend couldn't come to see us very often because they were watching him and his family. And they knew it was a small place and everybody knew that we ran away, but they didn't know where we are. And sometimes he used to bring us something and he used to bake the dish, and then we only had bread and water and a little oil. So we had really not very little to eat. And we couldn't go out only during the night, in the evening, because we were afraid they're going to see us. So, and my poor mom, she was constantly had to tell me to be quiet because what does a 6-year-old know? So, but I remember very well what happened. Maybe I don't remember what happened yesterday sometimes, but I remember so well what happened to us. Then we were there for almost a year. It was cold and cold and hungry. And we never knew how bad it was for the other people because we didn't know anything. Only when the Russians came in. That was a year later. And that's when they came in, then our friend, when they knew that things, got calmed down, then he came to tell us. And the Russians liberated us. When we came home, I was like a wild person. I was my mother always told me to be quiet and everything. So when we came home, I was like hiding all the time. And crying if I saw a person. And I was just scared about everything. We suffered so much in there, and I had to be quiet all the time, and now I was able to cry, and but I was still very afraid. For months and months, I was terrified of people. And that's how I remember everything, and like I say, we were always hungry and cold. And we didn't see any people. I mean, we didn't see any people at all, only my father's friend, who used to come, like I say, once in a while because they were watching. Children left my age. In that area, not in Satumare, not in the small villages, no Jewish children left at all. I was a miracle child. People used to come from all over to see me. There was no children. But at the time, I remember when my father came back. So I have to tell you this story.
Okay.
My mom, when we came back, we had the empty house. Everything was gone. They took everything, like either the neighbors or people who thought that we never come back. So we had an empty house. So some neighbors brought back the stuff, some didn't. Anyway, my mother started putting stuff together, and then we heard that my father is alive. So, but we didn't know, who's coming. People were coming back, but one at a time, When they let them go, some people never came, they didn't come back. Some people came back, they didn't have family, they left. But when they started coming back, we heard that my father was alive. That's how we heard from other people, because my father didn't know that we are alive. So, my mom had a friend who lived in a different village, also a Romanian friend, not a Jewish friend, because they still didn't come home. So she lived in another small village, and she took me for a weekend to give my mother a little break. She took me to her house, and they didn't have cars like now, so my father came into that village. There was a train there. So they came with the train in, but in our village we didn't have a train. They had only, carriages. They hired carriages and horses at the time. And he came to that house where I was, but he didn't know I'm there, and I didn't know who he was. And he was looking for a horse with a carriage to take him to our village to get some ikka. And the guy was talking to him. He said, "Who are you? Where are you going?" I'm from Gerzanika, and my name is Salomon Grunfeld. So he tells the guy. The guy looks at him. He says, he says, "I'm going to tell you something. Your daughter is here." And that's how I met my father. He came to that house to look for, and he found me there. So he couldn't imagine. And then, of course, the guy, he didn't even charge it. It was like so many miracles happened that he should come to that house where I was and to find me there after my father was in the house and he came. Oh my goodness. Lost all the people but we loved. We could never forget that. But what was nice that my father came back, and we became a family. And then my youngest sister, who was born after the war, my sister Eva, and she has a beautiful family now. So was a beautiful thing, that we actually were a family. Well, it's actually good to talk about, because, it's good for people to know what happened, and they shouldn't forget what happened, because God forbid it could happen again. And people the people like, there is a lot of haters, and we hope that they're going to do something about this. But what happened then was a tragedy. All these innocent kids, all these innocent families who didn't do anything bad to anybody. So I think I was blessed that I survived. I don't know why, but I did. And now I have a beautiful family. I have my daughter, I have my grandkids, my son-in-law, beautiful family. After all that what we went through, it's a miracle. Oh, we met by introduction. See, when I was growing up, there was no young people. So he lived in another small village, and my father knew everybody, and somebody told him about my husband, and then he came. They introduced us, and there was no long engagements like here.
Right.
So we met, and then we got married. We met like maybe in the summertime, and we got married January. And we were married for almost 65 years when he died. Yeah. We had good days and bad days. Not everything is perfect all the time. And it was very hard in Romania, because after the war, things, like my parents were pretty comfortable before. We had my father had a mill where they made flour and oil and stuff like that. And we came back, and of course everything was gone. So they did different things, and then my father had two brothers who left Romania right after the war, right after. So they came to the United States. So my parents, they all put on the paper, we put in our passports and everything to come. But after a lot of rejections, they got the passport and I didn't, because I had a child. So they came, and then we gave the papers into again and again. And it was very hard to be without them. I didn't have any family left there. And my husband was working seasonal, because they couldn't find like steady jobs, because we gave in the papers, and they were very, once you signed up to leave the country, you were enemy. They didn't like that we wanted to leave. And they didn't let us bring anything from them, no valuable, no nothing. We came with 45 pounds of clothes. That's what we know. And a wedding band, no jewelry, no money. Nothing. So when we got the passport and we came to the United States, we didn't even have a dollar. My daughter was 8 years old when we came, and she was thirsty in the train, because we took the train from there to Vienna. We had to wait for our passport to come to the United States. We had to wait for them to let us in. So what happened is I luckily brought some cigarettes. Nobody was smoking, and when we got to Budapest, obviously I speak both languages. So in the train there was a Hungarian young man, and I said, would you like to buy some cigarettes from me? I said, my daughter is thirsty and we don't have any money. So he gave me some money to be able to buy a drink to my daughter. We came with nothing. And then we came to Vienna, and my parents knew about it already, that we got there. And we were there for 4 months, and they sent us some money. And my husband knew somebody there, and he let him work in a clothing factory a few days. So we had a few dollars to eat, because obviously we came with nothing. And the joint knew about us actually, but. They didn't. My parents were sending me a few dollars till I was there, and I worked a few days, and like that we were there for 4 months. Very hard because the Viennese people, the Germans, are really very bad. I mean, they're very bad to the Jews. So we couldn't rent. You really like a place. They would only rent for a year. So we stayed at one of these German houses. We rented a room, and they were so mean. Like my daughter, she had a daughter like my daughter, and this German woman who rented us the room, and she wouldn't even let her play with it, but she wouldn't let us. We had privileges to the kitchen. But what she used to do, she used to put off the pilot that I shouldn't be able to cook, like only at certain times. So I couldn't wait to leave, and finally, after 4 months, we got the passport to the United States, and we came here. So my parents were new people also in the country, so didn't have that much either. So they lived on Grand Avenue on the 3rd floor, no elevator. And I was so surprised because, I thought America is, the land of,
Right.
it was the land of opportunity, but I didn't know how my parents, they both worked. My mother never worked a day in her life. And here she was working and my father was working. My sister had just gotten engaged when we came to the country. So we stayed with my parents for around 2 months, and then we found an apartment. It wasn't easy. Meyer started working. He used to deliver. He was a delivery man. We didn't speak the language. We had to eat.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so easy, but we had opportunities, Here we are,
Yeah.
So, we both worked, and thank God, I was selling. I was in sales. I worked for a department store, the Oldman and Company, on 34th and 5th. It was one of like Saks Fifth Avenue and high class store. I started working there, and I didn't know any English. They hired me for Christmas, and I was there for 24 years till they
Wow.
closed. It wasn't easy, but yeah, that's where I started. And then I worked here for 24 years. I worked for Lawrence, also in sales. I did everything. I was selling, I was decorating, I was whatever was to do.
I did it all.
I did it all. I worked till I was 75. I loved to work. But, and then unfortunately, when I thought I'm going to do so much after I retired, and then he got sick, and then I just had to take care of him, so it wasn't easy. Well, obviously my children, my grandchildren, and I'm very proud to be in the United States. I appreciate America very much. Some people don't, but I do. Not to hate. Hatred is a terrible thing. And if you wanna do something, and if you wanna do and you wanna work, you could always have opportunities here. Like I said, I'm very proud to be American. I'm an American citizen. After 5 years, we became citizens. I worked hard, but I was always happy.
Yeah.
We worked very hard, my husband and I.